Support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
So between our two states, there are 241 companies in this industry sector with 91,000 industry-related jobs to show for it, producing an economic impact of over $9 billion annually. Pun intended, this is not a half-pint business, but a serious driver of economic and cultural development. Welcome back. Thanks for supporting the most widely watched source of Carolina business and public policy. I'm Chris William, and with that kind of commercial power, the Carolinas craft beer business is now much more than just a college boy obsession. On this program, we'll discuss the microbrewery's unlikely ascendance as one of the region's and country's premier business segments.
Major funding also by Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Chris Goulet, owner of Birdsong Brewing Company, Jaime Tenny, owner of Coast Brewing Company, Joe Rowland, owner of Nantahala Brewing Company, and Uli Bennewitz, owner of Weeping Radish Farm Brewery. Now, here's Chris William.
Hello, welcome to our program. It's amazing how much dialogue we've had prior to the show and prior to any beer or alcohol being served here. It's pretty amazing. I feel overdressed, by the way, notwithstanding you, Uli. Welcome, guys. This is great. The whole crew's been looking forward to this, but no one brought samples. I will say.
I can still have some delivered.
Chris, we'll take you up on that. Welcome to the program. Uli, let me start with you. You're kind of the dean of it, the statesman of microbrewery, craft beers in the Carolinas. You had the first microbrewery on the map in North Carolina. How did we find ourselves where we are with such an economic impact? At least we talk about North Carolina, but also South Carolina. How do we find ourselves where we are with this kind of growth and this kind of billion-dollar business?
Well, I think it's the classic answer to the so-called global economy. We are now shrinking it back down to a local economy, not just from a production point of view, but also from a consumption point of view. The consumers want to engage with the local producers, and that synergy is exactly what the global economy cannot do. And that is to create, again, the local village, if you want to call it that, where the guy produces and the guy consumes all at the same time. And that applies to beer just as much as it does to food. It happens on all fronts.
So, the obvious question would be, if, Uli, since you may kind of paint that picture, then the connectivity from a microbrewery to a local farm or farm raised or local, whatever that I'm assuming there's a big one there.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. We've become sort of the center, I think, of all of our communities. So where I'm at, a tiny town of 1,300 people, and before we were there really wasn't a gathering place that you would come together on a Friday or Saturday night and hang out with your friends or hang out with people from outside of town who were visiting the area and drink a beer and have a conversation. That just didn't really exist, at least where I'm at. And I think that's happened in a lot of towns, both in North Carolina and South Carolina.
Why would you move to a town of 1,300, Joe, and expect to have a profitable business?
Great Smoky Mountain National Park, most visited park in the country by double. We get close to 10 million visitors a year. And so our tiny little town pretty much thrives on that economy. And so there's plenty of people from outside the area to come and enjoy our product, which allowed us to live somewhere where we really wanted to live, but then also be in a place in a state that allows us to distribute as well, so we can send our beer elsewhere, all the way out here to Charlotte in the wintertime. So
Yeah,
Very cool.
Go ahead, Chris. You seemed like you wanted to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say, to play off the farm comment, we brew a jalapeno pale ale that's got kind of a cult following. And we work very closely with one particular farmer who runs a little garden called Green Thumb Gardens, and up in Concord. And we went up to his place and walked through his garden, and it's just amazing. And he's just got this beautiful setup. And so it's really great to work with him and know where the peppers come from. And our customers love it because we just tell them about how we went and helped pick peppers that day. And they're also super fresh and delicious, which is nice.
Jamie, the industry, the microbrewery, seems like it's kind of that place where you can be your own boss, you can be the kind of person you want to be, you can be in kind of a cool business, and you get to make money. So how much of the business is the cool factor? How much of the business is, wait a minute, this is a serious corporate business, we can grow it by, X times per year?
Sure.
So I guess one of the questions is, how do you not lose the edginess of what you started doing just simply because of the pure success of the business maybe that you have had or the industry has had?
Sure. Well, I think for most of it, it's just a passion. So it was from my husband and I started Coast, mostly because it's what he's always done. This is what he wanted to do. He's a brewer for 17 years now, and you have that passion. But you quickly realize passion doesn't pay the bills. Passion doesn't deal with an 18-hour day.
Right.
It's what gets you through it. But it turns out it's about 99% really hard work. But our saying at the brewery is, whether you have a good or bad day, there's beer at the end of it. So it makes it all worthwhile. But I think that the common misconception is that it's mostly fun. You're living the dream every day. But the reality is it's a ton of hard physical work, as well as negotiating, whether it's law, legislation, policy,
Right.
filing of reports. I mean, it's a heavily regulated industry, so you spend a lot of time not actually making beer. It's dealing with everything
And
else.
it's funny because everybody's always telling you how much fun your job is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And do you buy that? Do you nod
Oh,
your head?
yeah, we're totally like, oh, yeah, it's
That's all it is.
it's
It's
awesome.
fun all
Yeah,
the time.
it's no problem.
It's just not all the time fun.
Right.
So Uli, at the end of 3 decades now, you've been doing this. Is it still about the passion for you?
Oh, very much so. And it's wonderful to see the growth, my God. When we started, there were less than 80 breweries in America. Now we have 7,000 or whatever the number is. I mean, just to watch that and to be part of such an incredible growth model. And it started off at just beer, and now, as you said earlier on, it gets into the farm and the food and all these other issues.
Craft distilleries.
And craft distilling and all these issues. I mean, we're actually now brewing beer with North Carolina grown ingredients, which is fantastic. And it helps, again, pulling another industry, which is small-scale farming, out of its doldrum and bringing it back. And that passion is amazing. And I mean, the big boy is talking about growth rates from 1, 2, or -1, -2, and we're talking about growth rates of 20-30% per year.
Right.
That is fun to be in.
Yeah, that is fun. That's true. Yeah, that's a
Yes.
good point.
Is that sustainable?
I think it is.
I think so.
Absolutely, I think it is. I mean, you've got so much product being made by some of the very large breweries that was the only thing available for a very long time. And I like to think of it as deregulation in terms of some of the things that these guys have been able to do over the years. But opening up the market and making it fair based on our point of view and not the point of view of the distribution chain all the way down to the individual who might own a bar or restaurant selling our beer and supporting us. So I think that in that respect, it has changed, and now we have options. People before maybe never knew even what an IPA was or
Right.
a pale ale outside of Sierra Nevada, but now they're able to try jalapeno beer or a double IPA or an imperial stout, and they're like, wow, I like this. And probably never would have known they liked that if we hadn't been given the ability to do that on all fronts. I mean, everything from giving us the tools we need to be profitable to also raising the state alcohol by volume levels so that we can make a beer that's 10-15%.
Right.
Not that we all do that a lot because
Right.
we enjoy what we drink
Yeah,
and you can't
sure.
sit around drinking 10% beer all day, but it is nice to have the option.
Just 3 or 4.
What do you all
just
think? You know, you all got this light, and Uli, after 3 decades, you still have it in your eyes. You got this light in your eyes about your industry. What do you think is misunderstood about the craft beer business? And you said that's a lot of hard work. It's 99% hard work, but there's beer at the end of the day.
Sure.
But what else is it about that industry that it's not all fun and games, that you have to be serious about X to make sure it works?
Well, when you said, is it sustainable, I think those of us that are committed to the entire process from start to finish, who have that passion, will be the ones that are still around in 5, 10, 20 years, where some folks that open because it is a burgeoning industry will think, oh, there's money there, let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
And if that passion isn't there, they're not gonna have that longevity.
I think people think that the big inhibiting factor that could slow down craft growth is really the Anheuser-Busch, Miller Coors, big companies, but really they're actually fueling our growth because they're trying to launch faux craft brands, which actually kind of helps us out. The big potential risk from my perspective is just quality. So if you've got people who are like, wow, this business is growing 20% a year, it's got solid margins, people are really excited about it, I can get into it. If you get into it with $2 million and you brew terrible beer, you have just turned off thousands of customers who are now thinking maybe McUltra's okay, right?
So, Chris, do you
Absolutely.
have to sell the uniqueness of, let's say, Birdsong's jalapeno beer? Do you have to sell the uniqueness to the guy or the gal that's pulling down the tap? Do you have to sell it to the consumer? Do you have to sell it to your investors? I mean, how do you make sure that they know that there is a difference between the big AB InBev product and your product?
Well, we have to be careful not to sell it too much because we'll sell out.
We all have that problem.
But really, it resonates with customers very intuitively. They get that we're a small local brewery. If they've been there, they've met the brewers, they've met the folks who work there. I mean, there's only 16 of us now, so chances are you could walk in and meet half the staff all at once, right? Because we all kind of hang out in tap room.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot of education. What does take education is basic things like unfiltered beer versus filtered and pasteurized. So a lot of consumers are very accustomed to beer that's basically gotten the soul sucked out of it, and it can be shipped anywhere in the country and at any temperature. That's a little unfair to the big guys.
I was going to say, is the soul sucking out of the thing? Is that your opinion, or is that just kind of?
If you filter and pasteurize it,
He
then
meant flavor.
It's
I meant
not just
flavor,
that.
yeah.
You basically they make it bulletproof.
right.
You have a joke that you can forget about a bottle of one of those products and leave it in your kayak, or your boat, and come back the next summer and go, oh wow, look at there, I see that. Throw it on ice, and it's probably going to taste the same way it did a
Real
year
similar.
ago. You take one of our beers and do that, and there's the potential for it not to be what we intended for it to be.
Right. We brew, at least the Birdsong, and I think most of you guys are pretty much in the same boat, so we don't filter or pasteurize anything, so our beer is still alive. So if you treat it poorly, if you let it get warm, or you leave it in the sun, or you let it age, and it's not a style that should age, it's not going to taste the way we want it to taste when you finally get to consume it. And I think that part of the education is more work than convincing people that it's different. It's just helping them understand it actually needs a little care and attention, as opposed to
Uli, let me come back to this point about what do you think is misunderstood about the beer business? I mean, we all look at it from the outside and think, oh, that'd be cool to do, and I like that, I don't like that one.
I'm not quite sure what is misunderstood. I think we are now, as a nation, we are dealing with the globalization, and what this industry is doing is just like the local food movement. The village concept that you were talking about at the beginning is people are like the idea of actually, as you were saying, meeting the people that make the product.
Right.
I don't care if you talk about farmers markets or your tap room. People want a connection with whoever the person is that produces. And it adds character, there's no question about it. The bigger your distribution system becomes, it may not suck out the life of it, but it certainly sucks out the flavor out of it, there's no question about it. Again, parallels between food are the same. Look at the growth in farmers market, look at the growth in the culinary world. It's the same thing. People are kind of getting more adventurous in a way. I mean, with the first beer we brewed in '86, my God, it was a wheat beer. we couldn't give it away. People didn't know what a wheat beer was in '86. I mean, the poor German that brewed it was his master brew. He was horrified of America because, he thought, what a barbaric country that didn't know what wheat beer was. And nowadays, by God, we are brewing beers in America that win competitions in Germany. So it's fascinating what's going on.
Well, I think of Budweiser. I think of Miller Lite. I think of all these major brands that, maybe not Miller Lite, but they all started small. They were all. So I think the question here is the enemy of your product getting too successful? Because if you can't ship it to any degree where it's going to lose the integrity of the artisan's work, then, isn't that a burden for you to some degree, where you don't want to become so successful?
It depends how you define success. If success or
shipping more cases per year.
But that's the problem, isn't it? If Budweiser is so much more efficient than any of us. The efficiency is staggering.
Yeah.
And Walmart is incredibly efficient. All of these big, huge international conglomerates are highly efficient, but the consumer is beginning to realize, whoopsie, there is something other than pure efficiency. If you want the most efficient food distribution, irradiate everything and you can distribute food all over the world, it'll never go off. See what I'm saying? But there is no taste or flavor or the chance of cancer to boot. So efficiency, it's not all about economic efficiency anymore. This is where people, as you said, the soul. It is the soul. They want people, the consumers feel, wow, we want a community. And beer is a focal point of community. Of course, I'm from the old country where there is only a local pub. That's it.
Yeah,
right. And when I came to America, there wasn't such a thing. There was McDonald's, which is the opposite of the local pub.
Right.
But we are gaining strength. We are beginning to get back together again, a community, as you said.
But I want to be sure here, gaining strength as a group of small breweries, not gaining strength with the scalability to be successful in the definition that you just talked about with Budweiser and Walmart.
That is correct.
Right.
Yeah. Is that right? Is that what you're all
Yes.
understanding?
I don't think many of us want that either.
No.
That's exactly right.
You sit and talk to someone like Vinny who owns Russian River. He and his wife, they do 14,000 barrels. They're in California in wine country. They have no interest whatsoever in really growing that business to be much bigger than it is. And that's kind of the other side of the country, a very well-known brewery. The only growth they want to see is so they don't run out of one of their most popular beers at 2 o'clock every day or before that. And I think many of us are the same way. I sell my beer within 25 miles of the building 80% of the year. And that's the way I want to keep it. And in order to grow, I only want to grow so that I'll have the people who support us calling and saying, hey, I'll take 4 kegs this week, and I have to say, I'm sorry, I don't have it. I'll have to get back to you next week when maybe I have some more.
Feel about wine?
So there's still a huge opportunity for all of us locally to continue to get our products in the hands of folks who are sitting right here in Charlotte, for example, with you guys. So
yeah, I think a lot of times growth is defined as efficiency and an increase in production. So you're trying to crank out as quickly and efficiently the most identical product possible, and we don't think about growth that way, right? That's okay if you're talking about like a box of nails, because you want them to all be identical and you want them cheap and you want them today. But if you're talking about a product that you're going to consume and enjoy as an experience with friends and neighbors, then some character is appreciated, right? And you don't want it to be identical and cheap and fast.
Yeah, no cookie cutter.
Right. You actually want to experience it.
And I've talked to many restaurant owners who don't brew beer, and they say, we cannot believe in the last 5 years these weird customers come in all the time asking for the local beer. Even some restaurant owners are befuddled by this, but that's really where this world is moving to. So they call us up and say, can we buy some beer from you? Because everybody's asking for the local brewery. So there is a change. There is a change in the general public as well.
So speaking of that, so you build a critical mass, you tweak your beer, you get it right. Jaime, you've done a lot of work on this front, and that is making sure legislatively that you have, open road in front of you. How hard was it to change law? And what kind of stuff did you have to go through?
Set you up for that.
So I'm from the state of New Jersey, so I have a little bit of an attitude streak, and that has been both detrimental and extremely helpful.
And you live in North Charleston.
And I live in South Carolina.
It's important to know.
So I went into that thinking it was really so my husband and I could both open our own brewery, he was a brewer already, as well as go down the street and buy a beer over 5% by alcohol. So I started that specifically just to get that law changed and we can open a brewery. Otherwise, plan B was to move to North Carolina. At the time, though, I thought, oh, a law change, it's got to be easier than moving to North Carolina.
That's a plan B.
Well, that was 9 years ago. I did get a law changed. The ABV is now 15 by weight. We're actually higher than North Carolina.
What's the
Thank you very much.
ABV? Alcohol by volume?
Yeah, 17.5 by volume.
Okay. That's the high
It's the
end.
one thing we have higher than North Carolina.
You could burn that in your
Otherwise, there are
Working
laws.
on that one immediately.
Otherwise, there are laws trump
Let's write
us.
that down.
But so that
recipes
connection
over
that
10
they're
anyway.
talking about of people, meeting up at a brewery, having clubs, having fundraisers, just talking was non-existent in South Carolina prior to 2010 because you could not go to a brewery and sample beer, buy beer. It did not exist 4 years ago. So we've come a long way. And that's what we were really missing was that connection. People could not come to my brewery and I could not tell them about it, or technically I could tell them, they just couldn't try it. So I could say, look at all this good beer, you can't have any. And so that's what really opened the door is us. It's still limited for South Carolina, but we're, again, heading in the right direction. But me, because who knows my beer better than myself? Nobody. I know it more than anybody else. So to be able to talk to people, connect people, once they see your brewery, that's it. And you're serving good beer. It
the
all
light
works.
goes off and it all. So
Absolutely.
if you all have said it or you've inferred it at some point where you've got. You almost have a town center. You've got folks sharing a good experience around in a pub or around a table. That would seem like that's some pretty fertile ground for a culture to come together and to take some leadership role in not just changing law, but some of the issues that.
Being involved in your community.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That's
So how
exactly
does-
what's happening.
So does that happen? And in what? Give us an example of how that might have happened besides a law change.
Sure. I mean, we host meetups, whether it's like the Adopt a Greyhounds. They'll come and bring greyhounds, and sure enough, somebody's going home with a rescue dog that day.
Okay, what about, and not that is not important, but what
Sure.
about broader issues? Uli, what about education? What about transportation? What about some of those things that bubble to the top of the dialogue?
Education, in my way, I describe our business as a celebration of craft. And I think as a nation, we have thrown out, from an educational point of view, the craft education. Everybody has to run off to college and get some sort of degree in something. I think we're on a backswing. Craft of brewing, the culinary crafts, butchering, all these are traditional crafts that we've thrown away as a country, and we have to bring them back. And I see the microbrewing as a main driver of refocusing education, not just on college-based, but also on craft and technical training. All these, we need to bring those. That's where the future is as far as job goes, not just more academia. Not everybody can have an academic life, but if you listen to our educational debate right now, you think that's all we have.
Chris, were you
Right.
going to say something?
I was just talking to two customers yesterday. We hosted probably 2 or 3 weeks ago a project review with UNC Charlotte, and they had brought in a bunch of professors who basically professors and students who walked through projects they'd been working on, shared some beers and shared ideas. And a couple of them came back the other day, and they met at that event and decided they're going to work on a collaborative effort that's a combination architecture, sculpture. They want to do interactive, or I'm going to totally mess it up. They want to do building cladding that's more aesthetically pleasing and potentially more energy efficient.
So ideas are coming.
Right.
from
Yeah.
this. Not to mention the incredible amount of tax money that every brewery, because we're highly regulated, highly taxed, whether it's from the sales tax, whether it's from the excise tax, whether it's from the manufacturing tax, that
All
goes
tax.
to actually support the schools in your area, your state. Man,
We're a very small company. Our excise tax,
What's your head count in your company? Just so-
there's 16 of us, probably about 4 part-time. Our excise tax monthly is well and away the highest paid employee.
yes. All of us would agree
All
with
of
that.
us.
And
The
I
cost
looked
of
at that
doing
yesterday. We got a bill of 43% of that went to our local community college.
And
So-
is that a good thing in your mind?
Yeah, absolutely.
Joe, were you going to say something?
We have
about
the
10
in
seconds.
North Carolina. We have the 9th highest excise tax in the country.
I
So
think we're the
clearly
fifth.
more work to be done.
About in the 65 or 66, 67 cents range. As opposed-
61.71 cents per gallon.
Folks,
a
I wish
lot.
I wish we had more time to talk because I really wanted to get your sense of what you look for in a good beer. But if you'd like to find out that, go to our website and we'll connect you with these folks.
Jose, we killed 23 minutes like that.
Yeah, like that. I'll drink to that. Thank you for being on the program.
Sure.
Thank
Good to
you.
see you all.
you.
Thank you for joining
you.
us. Until
Appreciate it.
next week, I'm Chris. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care, when and where you need it. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.org.